My dad kicked me out after accusing my son of stealing from him. My sister played innocent and fooled everyone, until I exposed her with evidence. Now she's spiraling and the family is in pieces. Last Sunday, my father blocked his own doorway and said, "Return the 40,000 your son stole or stay out." He didn't shout. He just held the door like a verdict. Beside him, my sister folded her arms and added, "Piper saw him near the safe." Every face in that room nodded like a jury that had already eaten dinner without me. The air smelled of roast beef and lemon cleaner. Jonah's hand tightened around mine until our bones lined up. I tried to breathe, but the house felt smaller than the accusation. I'm used to evidence and labels, not whispers. And what they didn't know was, I'd kept every receipt, every message, every piece of proof they thought had vanished. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. I've spent most of my life trying to prove I wasn't a mistake. That just happened to be useful. Growing up in the Clark house was like being cast in a play where the script was written by someone who only loved one character, and it wasn't me. Dad. Frank Clark was a union electrician who thought emotion was a malfunction. Mom Lorna translated everything into chores and broke my older sister by 2 years was the headline act. She sparkled. She cried on cue. She knew how to twist silence into sympathy. When she got straight A's, Dad hung her report card on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a gold star. When I won the county science fair, he said, "Good job, son," and used the same magnet to hold a coupon for brake pads. That difference wasn't loud. It hummed like the low buzz of a light that never shuts off. Our house smelled like dust coffee and whatever Mom was cooking to keep peace. Every Friday night, Dad would pull out his safest squad black metal box tucked behind his flannel shirts. He'd wipe his hands before he touched it like it was sacred. Inside were envelopes labeled in block letters, tax emergency house, and later one marked 40 kelvins, his dream number, his benchmark for security. He showed Brooke the inside once when she was 17. I know because I saw her bragging to a friend that she held the family future in her hands. He never showed me. When I was 17, I asked him once, half joke, half plea, if he'd teach me the system. He didn't even look up from his chair. "You're not the money type, Mason." He said, "You're the fixer. Every family needs one." I laughed then, because that's what you do when the floor drops a few inches under your feet. Brooke could crash a car cry in the kitchen and walk away with a new one. I once broke a plate while doing dishes and got a lecture about carelessness that lasted longer than the meal had. At the time, I thought that was just family. Now I know it was training. After college, I landed at the county medical examiner's office. Clean work, quiet halls, fluorescent light. I labeled, logged, and signed my name on every tag that followed a body. It wasn't glamorous, but it made sense. The dead didn't lie. Evidence told the story if you were patient enough. Maybe that's why I stayed. When my marriage ended 4 years ago, my ex said, "You live like an autopsy. Everything's sterile. Everything after the fact." She wasn't wrong. Jonah was 10 then. Quiet, deliberate, too observant for his age. He watched me sign the custody papers and whispered, "It's okay, Dad." I knew it wasn't, but his voice sounded like oxygen after drowning. We built a rhythm after that, half the week with me in my small apartment, half with his mom. Mornings, we'd split a stale muffin in the car before school. Evenings, he'd take apart broken laptops like puzzles, asking questions I sometimes didn't have answers for. Why do people lie was one of them. Because it's easier than telling the truth, I thought. But I told him they're scared of what the truth costs. He nodded like he understood. I hoped he didn't. Brooke, meanwhile, was busy polishing her life until it gleamed. She'd married Trevor, a man who called himself an entrepreneur, but lived like an influencer. He talked about burn rate and equity and seed money. But the only thing growing was their debt. Every 6 months, Brooke had a new crisis daycare mix-up, lost deposit tax misunderstanding. Dad's safe became their silent ATM. Once she called me crying about just a small bridge loan. I said no. She called again the next day. Voice lighter. "Trevor's talking to Dad. Don't stress. That was code for you'll pay later." And I did. I paid in resentment, in silence. In the currency of being the brother who doesn't rock the boat. At work. I started keeping duplicate files for everything. Chain of custody mattered there. It became a habit. Receipts, texts, screenshots, even emails from Brooke about checking her lease agreement. I didn't know it then, but that folder would save me later. The day Dad let Brooke take from the safe again, I was there. I'd come by to fix their Wi-Fi router. Mom made coffee. Brooke showed up mid-afternoon with her SUV idling in the driveway, music still playing through the open door. Dad grumbled something about emergency, then disappeared into the bedroom. When they came out, she was smiling and he looked 10 years older. I asked what happened. He said, "Family helps family." But I knew what that meant. Another envelope gone. Another silence earned. The thing about being the family's fixer is you stop noticing you're bleeding until you look down. That night, I found a childhood photo of us. Brooke with her ribbons, me with my uncombed hair standing half out of frame. Mom had written on the back, "Bruce Big Day." I wasn't even named. I stared at that picture until my eyes burned. Somewhere deep down, I made a decision. Next time they came for me, I'd have proof ready. I just didn't realize how far they'd go to make me use it. The first time I saw the safe up close, I wasn't supposed to. Dad had left the bedroom door open, flannel shirts angled like a blind. I was 22, home between shifts, carrying a box of cables he wanted organized the right way. The safe squatted on the floor like a space heater that knew secrets. I watched his hands hover over the keypad, the way a man touches a relic he thinks might save him. He glanced up, saw me, and closed the shirts with a stiff little smile. Not a word. That was our language then. Curtains closed doors, a smile instead of trust. Years blurred into errands. Fix the porch light, reset the garage keypad, talk to Mom about her phone plan. Brooke's requests came sugar-coated. "Mason, you're the best. Mason, you're a lifesaver." Sometimes she called me Mac like we were in a sitcom. I knew the punchline. I'd do the thing and she'd walk away lighter. Trevor started showing up with craft beer and jargon. He talked in bright loops that went nowhere. "You're a process guy," he'd say, clapping my shoulder. "I'm big picture." It sounded like an insult wearing cologne. Holidays became inventories. Brooke got gifts with weight and shine. I got tools and a handshake. When Mom put her wedding ring in the safe during Thanksgiving because the turkey grease made it slip, I saw her hesitate. "Well, put it back after dessert," she said. I watched Dad write a note on an index card. "Ring temporary." He tucked it on top of the envelopes like a bookmark in a book he never finished. By pi, the ring was back on her finger. I don't know why I remember that card more than the ring itself, but I do. Then came the summer of the unicorn party. Piper turning 9 under an arch of balloons that scraped the ceiling. Jonah stood with me by the cooler reading the labels like he was studying for an exam. "Can we get pizza after?" he asked, and I did the math in my head while Brooke announced a photo booth surprise. I told him yes. I told myself it was fine. Driving home with a paper crown on the passenger seat, I wondered when ordinary began to cost so much. 2 months before the accusation, Brooke called crying from the dealership. The Lexus logo sat behind her voice like a stage prop. "We are drowning," she said. "Trevor's equity hits in Q4. Dad's being a jerk. We just need a bridge." Mac. She sent me a photo of the lease across the console. She wanted advice. I typed a paragraph. I deleted it. I sent 6 words. "It's not my business." That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. In the Emmy office, I lived inside timestamps. The chilled air bit my fingers through latex. I took comfort in barcode beeps and the soft punch of labels feeding from the printer. Lacey, our forensic imaging tech, called me a monk with a laminator. She was quick with a joke, but she never joked about time. "Metadata is marriage," she said once, angling a light. "It remembers who touched what and when." I carried that line home and set it on my kitchen table next to the grocery list. Who touched what and when? It sounded like a new religion. When Dad asked me to talk to him on the porch, I knew it was about money before he opened his mouth. His beer bottle sweated into the wood rail. "This isn't how I was raised," he said, eyes on the yard. "My father would have thrown me out for asking. He said it the same way every time, like a spell." I nodded the way I always did. "Brookie's stressed," I said. He sighed like a man laying down a burden he had already decided to pick back up. Just this once. He went to the bedroom. I stayed on the steps and listened to the safe pad complain under his fingers. The last Sunday before everything cracked, Mom made roast with carrots the way she always did when she wanted peace to look like food. Brooke arrived late talking on speaker to someone who laughed too hard at the things she said. Trevor hovered like a background actor who didn't know his mark. Dad stayed standing. He does that when he wants to remind you whose house you're in. Jonah and I set the table. Piper swung her legs at the island and watched us set the forks like she was watching a show. We ate. We pretended. And I tried to ignore the way Dad's eyes kept sliding toward the hall. That night, after I put Jonah to bed in my apartment, I opened my drawer and started a folder titled Just In. I pulled up Brooke's text with the lease. I printed it. I logged into my bank and printed the last 3 months because Brooke tended to call right after I paid bills as if she could smell fresh debits. I ordered a pack of tab dividers and an accordion file, the kind that expands. It felt theatrical. It also felt like safety gear. I had learned by then that closure doesn't knock. You build a door and wait. On a Tuesday, Mom stopped by my work with a tin of cookies for the office and a question that sounded like a confession. "Do you think we should write down who uses the safe?" she asked softly, standing near the bulletin board. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway like she could see through walls to the black box and the envelopes. I said yes too quickly. Then I slowed down and asked why. "No reason," she said. My hands smelled like coffee grounds for an hour after she left. I told myself I was imagining things. I wasn't. When the accusation landed at the doorway that Sunday, I heard more than words. I heard the pattern. Family means no police. Family means no paper. Family means we all agreed. It was the opposite of the world I lived in, where an unlabeled bag could sink a case and a missing time can tear a truth to pieces. Jonah's fingers were bones and trust. He said, "I didn't. Not here." And no one in that kitchen wanted to hear the second half of his sentence. Not here is an odd thing for a child to say. It meant he understood territory better than any adult in the room. We left. That felt like the first honest thing I had done in that house since I was 16. At the red light, Jonah asked if we could still play chess after dinner. Like routine could save us if we protected it. I said yes. Before I could fold into that promise, I made another one to myself. I would collect the facts not to win, but to stop the line from breaking inside my kid. I started at my kitchen table. It's small, old, the surface scarred by a hot pan. I sat down in a hurry the night my ex moved out. I spread the tabs. Bank safe log car messages. I called Dad's credit union. I asked Bad Hold Music to wait while I requested statements. I used the words fraud and discrepancy without accusing anyone by name. The woman on the line perked up when I said audit. I printed confirmations and highlighted dates. I called the Lexus dealership and asked for a copy of the lease agreement Brooke had texted me citing a family records request for insurance. The man said he couldn't send it. Then he did. It wasn't enough. A timeline without eyes is a story you tell yourself. I needed a pair of eyes that didn't belong to me. So I went to see Mr. Weldon across the street from my parents' house. He is retired, fond of baseball caps, and the phrase "can't be too careful." He had installed a doorbell camera last winter after some kid took his snow shovel. He waved me in, wiped crumbs off the counter like he was ashamed of the evidence of eating, and asked what I needed. I set a time window. He said, "What's the occasion?" I lied. "Neighborhood watch." He liked that. We queued up late September. He poured coffee that tasted like burned toast. We watched people come and go the street like a stage. I saw Brooke Shoulders' stiff envelope in hand stepping out of my parents' door at 2:18 p.m. on the 30th. In the background, the SUV blinked. "Hello, mister." Weldon whistled a little. "Must have been a big bill," he said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Lacey helped me with the metadata. I didn't tell her it was my family. I gave her the timestamp and a shrug. She tilted her head at the pixels, at the light angle, at the tiny details that make a picture honest. She cleaned it without touching the truth. She emailed me a neat packet with a note. "Try not to stare at this too long." The night before the Wednesday meeting, I couldn't sleep. I walked my apartment like I was checking doors in a morgue. Jonah came out of his room and leaned against the hall wall, hair pointing in 3 directions. "You're doing the face," he said. "What face?" "The one you do when you're about to tell a doctor you disagree." I laughed. It sounded like air let out of a tire. He asked, "Are you scared?" I said yes. He nodded like he approved. "Good," he said. "Means we'll be careful." In the morning, I remembered something Mom said at Thanksgiving about her ring and the index card. I dug through the safe log. The copies Dad kept like a man who doesn't trust his own memory. I found a scribble that didn't match his block letters. A note marked, "Ring clean." Not his handwriting, not Mom's either. I compared it to Trevor's signature from the lease copy. The same swoop on the R. The same lazy tail on the G. It wasn't proof of a crime. It was proof of a habit. Borrow first, justify later. When I set that beside a credit pull I found on Mom's file for a store card, she didn't remember opening the pattern, drew itself like a map. I didn't bring that to the meeting, not yet. I tucked it into a pocket of the accordion file marked later. Families tell stories about themselves until they become instructions. We are generous. We keep things in the family. We don't make a scene. My family's instructions had become a lock. I wasn't breaking it to run. I was changing the code so my son could walk through the door without being told to leave his name behind. By the time I carried the banker's box into my parents' living room at 7, the past wasn't a place anymore. It was a file system. It had tabs and dates and margins where I'd written small notes to myself in pencil. Ask who touched what and when. Ask why we don't write things down. Ask why a child's word weighs less than an adult's embarrassment. I set the box on the coffee table. The wood dented under it. I didn't apologize for the wait. The group text came on a Monday morning at 8:12 a.m. The words looked like they'd been written by a lawyer who used emojis. Brooke, we should resolve this. Wednesday 7 p.m. at Mom and Dad's. Trevor, Mom dinner will be ready. Dad come with the truth. Then, under all that formality, Piper added a unicorn sticker, a bright pink smiling thing bouncing next to a family fracture. I stared at it until my phone dimmed. Jonah leaned over my shoulder. They're making it sound like court, he said. It's worse, I replied. Court has rules. At work that day, my gloves squeaked when I pulled them on. Every sound in the morgue felt too sharp. Dr. Ralph, my supervisor, noticed me labeling slower than usual. Everything okay, Clark? I hesitated, then nodded. Just family logistics. He gave me the kind of look people give when they've lived long enough to know that word means trouble. The day crawled. I logged times tags, temperatures, but my thoughts ran on a loop. If I didn't bring evidence, they'd eat me alive. If I did, I'd burn the bridge completely. There wasn't a version of Wednesday night that didn't cost something. That evening, I turned our kitchen table into a war room. Jonah helped, his hair sticking up in small defiance. We laid out the folders, safe log bank statements, Lexus lease, Venmo transactions, camera stills. The table looked like a crime scene minus the chalk outlines. You don't have to come, I told him. I know, he said, but I want to help. He started color-coding tabs while I printed one last set of pages from the credit union. The ink smelled like ozone and nerves. Around 9:00 p.m., my phone lit up again. It was, Mom, can we talk before Wednesday? Her text said, I called instead of replying. Her voice came through like static wrapped in guilt. Mason, can't we just let this go? Brooke's under stress. You've always been the steady one. I laughed once, a dry, short sound. Being steady doesn't mean I'm a doormat. Mom, I didn't say. You didn't have to. She was quiet for a long beat. Then your father says family doesn't need paperwork. Then your family shouldn't accuse people without it, I said, and hung up before my throat closed. Sleep didn't come easy. The apartment was too quiet. The fridge hummed like a small confession. I thought of the last time I'd been in my parents' living room. The same light over the dining table, the same framed photo of Brooke's wedding, me half-cropped on the edge. Even the air there had hierarchy. On Tuesday, I nearly ruined a report at work. I was typing up a case file and misentered the timestamp 1427 instead of 427. It was a small error, but in forensics, small errors are grenades. Dr. Ralph caught it during review. Clark, you're off your rhythm, he said quietly. I corrected it, heart pounding. Yes, sir. He handed the file back but didn't move away. You can't bring chaos from home into here, he said softer. It contaminates everything. I nodded. Because he was right. But I also knew chaos wasn't something you carried like a box. It leaks through cracks you didn't know you had. When I got home, Jonah had taped a sticky note to the table. Facts is greater than feelings. His handwriting was crooked but certain. It made me smile for the first time in 2 days. That night we practiced what to say if things got ugly. If Grandpa yells, we leave, I said. If Aunt Brooke cries, Jonah asked, we don't fill the silence for her. He grinned, small but fierce. Got it. At midnight, I checked the camera still again, the one Lacey cleaned up. Brooke in the doorway, envelope in hand. Timestamp clear. It wasn't just evidence, it was prophecy. By Wednesday morning, the city felt washed out. Early autumn sunlight cut through clouds like it didn't trust itself. I picked Jonah up from school early, said we had a family appointment. He didn't ask questions. He knew. Before heading over, I printed one last page, a cover sheet that said, Chain of Custody, Family Safe Discrepancy. It was half sarcasm, half shield. I slipped it on top of the stack. As we loaded the box into the car, Jonah looked at me and said, You don't have to prove anything to them, Dad. Maybe not, I said, shutting the trunk. But I'm proving something to you. By late afternoon, clouds rolled in low and heavy like the sky knew there was about to be a storm indoors. The drive to my parents' house took 15 minutes, but every traffic light stretched it longer. Jonah sat quiet beside me, his chessboard wedged between his knees, a nervous habit he didn't bother explaining. We passed the old diner, the one that would later become ours, and he asked, Do you think Grandma believes it? I gripped the wheel. She believes what's easiest. That's not the same as true, he said. No, I said. It's not. When we pulled into the driveway, Mom's curtains twitched. The same oak tree hung its shadow over the minivan. Just like the night of the accusation, some things never learn when to leave. Inside, the air smelled like roast chicken and tension. Plates were already on the table, like we were about to eat civility for dinner. Brooke stood near the counter, dressed like she was auditioning for calm cream blouse gold earrings, hair pulled tight. Trevor leaned against the wall, scrolling his phone, pretending this wasn't about him. Dad stood by the living room doorway again, his hand resting on the frame. The same stance, the same silent authority. You came, he said. I said I would, I replied. You asked for the truth. Brooke crossed her arms. Then let's hear it. I placed the banker's box on the coffee table. The thud made everyone flinch. Before I start, I said, we're going to agree on one thing. Nobody interrupts until I'm done. Trevor snorted. This isn't a courtroom, man. I met his eyes. Then you won't mind if I treat it like one. I began with the smallest folder, the safe lock. Dad, this is your handwriting. You logged every withdrawal. July 2nd, 10,000. August 19th, 5,000. September 30th, 3,000. Total 18,000 withdrawn since summer. Your last noted balance, 12,300. Dad frowned. I know what I wrote. Good, I said. Then you know there was never 40,000 to steal. Brooke rolled her eyes. You're twisting this. He meant the gold balance. Funny, I said, pulling the next sheet that the withdrawals match your bank deposits. I laid out the printed statements, each highlighted in yellow. July 3rd, 10,000 cash deposit into your account. August 20th, 5,000. September 30th, 3,000. You even labeled one Venmo transfer car stuff. LOL. I'd laugh too if it wasn't slander. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Trevor's face drained a shade. I'm not finished, I said, sliding another folder open. Here's the lease agreement for your Lexus RX 350. Down payment 12,000 cash, June 28th. You texted me this for advice. Remember I said it wasn't my business. That was a mistake. It became my business the moment you accused my kid. Brooke's voice cracked. This is ridiculous. You're stalking me. No, I said quietly. I'm documenting. Trevor pushed off the wall, defensive. You can't prove where that money came from. I said, pulling out the photo still? The room froze. This is you, Brooke. September 30th, 2:18 p.m., leaving Dad's bedroom with an envelope. Caught by the neighbor's doorbell cam across the street. Metadata verified by an independent technician for a heartbeat. No one moved? Then Dad said, low and dangerous. We have a camera. You do, I said. Installed when you thought the neighbor's kid was stealing your bike pump. You forgot to delete the feed. Brooke took a step back. That envelope was for Mom's ring cleaning. Then why, I said, sliding the next print out forward? Did Trevor sign a pawn slip that same week for a short-term title loan? The ring was collateral. Lorna made a sound small, broken like a hinge giving way. Dad's hand slipped from the door frame. Trevor muttered something under his breath and grabbed his keys. "I told you this would blow up. Don't you dare leave," Brooke snapped. But he was already at the door. "You dragged me into your family circus. I'm done." The door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames. Piper, sitting in the corner with her tablet, jumped. Brooke's voice wavered. "He'll come back." "I don't think so. I said you've run out of fixers." Silence sat down in the room with us. Heavy, certain. I turned to my father. "You taught me that real men keep receipts." "So I did." I gestured to the stack of folders. "You can count every dollar, every signature, every withdrawal. What you can't count anymore is my patience." Mom started to cry softly. Brooke whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Far enough to accuse a 14-year-old, I said. Far enough to let him think he was invisible." Jonah wasn't there. I'd made him stay home this time, but I felt his presence anyway. Steady as gravity. I gathered the papers into neat stacks. "This isn't revenge," I said. "It's regarding. You don't get to call it family if you can't call it fair." Dad looked old suddenly, smaller than the frame he stood in. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," I said, sliding the lid onto the box. "Now you sign for the safe key every time you touch it, and you apologize to Jonah in writing. Chain of custody applies to people too." No one stopped me when I walked out. The smell of roast chicken followed me to the door, turning sour in the cool air. I set the box on the passenger seat, turned the ignition, and let the silence fill the car, the kind that comes after a verdict. I didn't sleep that night. The air in my apartment felt too still, like it was waiting for a sound that wouldn't come. The banker's box sat by the door, half open, a mouthful of truth. I wasn't ready to close around 2 a.m. I walked to the kitchen, poured water, and stared at my reflection in the window. I looked like my father, the same jawline, the same dark half-moons under the eyes. The only difference was the silence. His was control. Mine was aftermath. By morning, the call started first. Mom, then Dad, then Brooke. None of them left voicemails, just little bursts of missed calls, digital knocking. By noon, the text tone became unbearable. I turned off my phone. Jonah came home from school with his backpack unzipped, chessboard half visible. He looked at me like someone checking if the storm had passed. "Did it work?" he asked. "It worked," I said, "but that doesn't mean it's over." He nodded, the way he does when he's already guessed the ending. "They'll say sorry." "I don't know," I said, "but we're done waiting for permission to be believed." That Friday, Mom showed up unannounced. I found her in the hallway, clutching a container of roast chicken like a peace offering. "I thought you might be hungry," she said. I wasn't, but I let her in anyway. She hovered near the counter, eyes darting around the apartment like she was cataloging what hurt. "Your father feels embarrassed," she said. "Good," I answered. "Mason?" "No, Mom. That's what that feeling is supposed to be. It means the lie hit a wall." She pressed her lips together. "He's talking about buying a new safe. A better one." "Good," I said again. "Maybe he'll protect what's actually inside at this time." When she left, she touched my arm. "You were always different." I smiled without humor. "You made sure of it." After she left, I went for a drive. No destination, just motion. The sky had that late September bruised blue, heavy with leftover summer heat. I ended up parked outside the diner, the one Jonah loved. Inside light poured through the blinds and stripes landing across the form like bars. "Hey, Professor," the waitress called when Jonah walked in later, a few minutes after me. He must have guessed where I'd gone. "Hot chocolate?" she asked. He nodded. "Extra whipped cream." I watched him laugh with her, small and unguarded, and I realized something I hadn't known before. Peace doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it's just the sound of a kid laughing where he used to flinch. But peace didn't last long. 2 days later, Brooke texted, "Brooke, you humiliated me." Then another, "Brooke, you turned Dad against me." Then, "Brooke, are you happy now?" I didn't answer, but she kept going. "Brooke, we're not perfect. You blindsided me. Brooke, family doesn't air laundry. Brooke, Piper misses Jonah. Then a picture. Piper holding a crooked art project. Glitter everywhere. Caption. She misses you guys. I stared at it longer than I should have. The gluey paper tree, the lopsided hearts. Jonah looked over my shoulder. She didn't do anything wrong. He said, I know I said. Adults did. I typed and deleted for 5 minutes before sending one line. When you apologize to Jonah, we can talk. Then I put the phone face down. The next evening, Dad called. His voice had that low, growly tone that used to freeze me at 14. You went too far, he said. By showing you your own math, I asked. You broke your sister's marriage. No, I said quietly. They did that when they started using your safe like a lifeline. He grunted. Your mother's crying again. Then she should have stopped you before you pointed at my son. There was a long silence. I could hear the faint buzz of his TV in the background, the one that was always too loud. Finally, he said, You always think you're better than us. I took a breath. I never did, I said. I just stopped letting you be worse to me. He hung up. The line clicked like a lid snapping shut. That night I found Jonah sitting by the window, the chessboard spread between us. Your move, he said, sliding a pawn forward. I moved my knight without looking. He studied me. You okay? I smiled. Define okay. He shrugged. Alive, breathing, less haunted. I laughed softly, working on it. We played until the pieces blurred. The world outside was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a verdict has settled and everyone's still pretending to be fine. 3 days later, Brooke showed up at my door. No makeup, hair tied back, eyes rimmed red. She held a grocery bag like a shield. I brought muffins, she said, her voice small. Jonah looked up from the couch. I nodded and he slipped to his room. In the kitchen. She stood there for a full minute before speaking. I messed up, she said. I panicked. I blamed Eli. She stopped, corrected herself. Jonah, because I knew you'd fix it, and I hate myself for that. She swallowed hard. Brad Trevor's gone. He says I make everything someone else's fault. He's not wrong. She laughed, then cried at the same time. You know what the worst part is? I believed my own story for a while. I actually started thinking maybe Jonah did take it just so I didn't have to look at myself. I didn't move closer. I held the space steady. The way you hold a flashlight in an autopsy room to see, not to comfort. I need you to apologize to him, I said. No explanations, no excuses. She nodded quickly. I will. I already told Piper we were wrong, she cried. She asked if we were bad people. What did you say? I told her we did a bad thing, Brooke said quietly, and that we're trying to fix it. She turned to leave but stopped at the door. Dad won't talk to me, she whispered. He says I embarrassed him. That's not my part to fix, I said. You and Dad have your own drawer to open. She gave a small, sad laugh. You and your drawers. They're useful, I said. When the door closed behind her, I exhaled for the first time in days. In the next room, Jonah asked softly, Did she do it? She did, I said. He nodded, thoughtful. So now what? Now, I said. We stopped standing in doorways waiting for permission. The light from the hallway spilled across the chessboard, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the blur in the background of someone else's picture. A week passed before the phone went quiet. The first few days were full of half apologies and emotional spam. Moms, you're being dramatic. Dad's come over. We'll sort it out. Brooks, can we reset? Then the noise thinned like a radio fading out of range. I didn't miss it. Jonah and I built our own rhythm. We started eating breakfast at the diner every Wednesday, the one that had watched me unravel from the parking lot that night. The waitress Karen called him Professor because he wore glasses and ordered with a small, serious voice. Scrambled eggs, sourdough, hot chocolate, extra whip, he'd say, and she'd salute like it was a secret code. That diner became our new Sunday dinner. No doors to block, no safe to guard, just a father and son eating peace like it was a rare dessert. At work, I stopped answering calls I didn't want to answer. I stopped saying yes by reflex. Dr. R noticed. You're lighter, he said one morning, scanning the caseboard. Or emptier, I said. Same difference, he replied. Some nights, the anger still bubbled a low chemical heat under my ribs. I'd picture my father's hand on the doorframe, the way his knuckles whitened as he said, "Stay out." I'd see Brooke's face when the steel frame hit the table, a perfect mask cracking at the edges. Those images clung like fingerprints you can't bleach out. Then I'd hear Jonah's laugh from his room. The clack of chess pieces and the noise inside me would slow. Revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes it's paperwork. Sometimes it's peace. A month later, Brooke texted me, "We sold the SUV. I'm starting over. Trevor's gone for good." Then a second message. "Do you still have that budget spreadsheet you made for Mom?" I sent it. She replied with a heart emoji. I didn't respond. 2 days after that, Dad called. "Got a new safe." He grunted. "Different code, no spare key under the flannel. Sign-in sheet, too." "Good," I said. "Treat it like it matters." He paused. "You always think you're smarter? I just keep better records." I said and hung up. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability, the kind that stays when applause fades. Now when I look at Jonah across the diner table, I think about all the things we don't owe anymore. Not explanations, not apologies we'll never get. Just the truth written down, signed, dated. If you've ever been the quiet one, the fixer, the background blur in your own family photo, you know how heavy silence can get before it breaks. I'm not chasing revenge anymore. I'm documenting peace. My name is Mason Clark. I cut through noise for a living, but this time I did it for my son. We stopped waiting for permission. We built our own door with our own key.